Aisha Adams, and you're watching the Asheville View, and today we're going to have a conversation about disruption. Hi.
Hey.
I want to talk about disruption because yesterday I was at one of my favorite places, which is a work camp conference. I love work camp. Those are my people. That's my community. But one of my friends said, if you want to have a conversation about politics, you should invite Aisha in. And sometimes I just feel like I'm always seen as hyper political.
Right.
And while I love being seen as a change maker, as an influencer, I also wonder like how I show up in the world and if I'm being too political, too much, too strong. And I just wanted to hear from the two of you, like how often have you had to disrupt, or just tell me about a time you had to disrupt?
Growing up in a culture where women always had to come next or second, I've always been a disruptor. I didn't choose to be a disruptor, I just kind of had to be. It's a culture where women are second, the men are the head of the household, the women have to cover up so the men don't get excited, the women get half of the inheritance. Like, these are things that the government has in place. So you're always kind of having to be quiet, having to act a certain way, having to talk a certain way to be proper. But I've always had an issue with that. And it was always, it'll come out in my high school classes, like in religion classes, where I would always be the one asking the question that nobody's supposed to ask. You're supposed to just take it and go with it. I'm always the girl who calls out the men for harassment, because in that culture, you're supposed to just move on and not cause any trouble and just take it, smile, move on, go away. It'll go away if you do that. But I've always been the girl who would call them out. And sometimes it's not a good feedback that you get. Sometimes you'll get assaulted, sometimes you get insulted. And so I've always felt like it is my duty to be that girl who would always say, this is not okay. I know we're supposed to do this, but I'm not doing it because it's not okay. We are not second. We're not less than you. So I just feel like it was something that I've done my whole life. I've always had to do it.
That's really awesome. I feel like I don't disrupt, but I low-key disrupt because I like to be very much like water. So you're like going down a stream and you're flowing around rocks, and those rocks are like people's expectations of you. And
That's a really
I
good
like
way
to
to put
swerve like around those rocks, but low key as I'm doing it, even though water is not necessarily abrasive and really, over time I'm still making these expectations and these assumptions smaller because water wears away those. And so you're not gonna see me, not often see me popping off or yelling at anybody.
I've seen you pop off.
But I'm sure you have.
I can tell you can pop out.
I've seen him pop
off. But in general, like my way to disrupt is to disprove what people's preconceived notions of how you're going to be are. And that's really important to me, is just be the best person I can be and prove them wrong.
I think it's so interesting, Myriam, because coming from a Muslim country, I feel like people say like, oh, Muslim women are seen as second, but like there's a loophole in the rape laws in North Carolina. I am paid less because I'm a woman.
Right.
Like that's second, right? And what's the difference?
Yeah.
Right? We're told like we should be docile and speak softly and be cute and look a certain way. So we have the same type of societal norms here. They just look different because we're in a different space.
Right.
And I think that we're super judgmental of Muslim countries, but we have the same behaviors.
We do.
We have the same attitude, and it's much worse because while we do that, we're constantly judging Muslim countries.
But
Because
it's
we
not
say
the
that we're
law,
not
we
doing
just
it.
call them social norms.
Oh, it is the law. It's the
But it is
law.
low-key.
Yeah.
It's the law. It's
the law.
It's the law here as well. In some religions, women can't wear pants. Same thing.
I mean, you've got the Mennonites and they have to wear, the little I don't know what they're called, to be honest,
The
but you know,
turbans,
it's still
the
a
jab?
hair covering.
Oh, okay.
And the Mennonites, and that's you know, off of Christianity. But we're always, you know, harassing people who are Arabic for wearing them. But
Absolutely. Yeah.
we still have.
I think we
religions that-
just assume, we just say in this country, we just say that we are open, but especially with what's going on right now, I don't see any difference between any of the other countries that oppress women with now these new laws and what's happening right now. When it comes to women's rights, I feel like it's almost the same thing. We're still oppressed, and it's really sad to me that we've come so far away, but right now we're kind of backpedaling to those types of cultures.
Sweetie,
what
we're
we
not
do-
backpedaling. We're falling backwards down hole and rolling.
We are
And
rolling.
one of the things that we do is that we use Muslim countries as a cover for that. So we can say, well, we don't make you cover your head, so we're progressive.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, you're not. You're not progressive.
No.
Yeah.
No.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So I have another question for you. So when we're going through this, because we're obviously all going through this and feeling this. I mean, Kirby, I feel like for you, in some spaces and places, just being who you are is seen as a disruption. How do you deal with that? And the same for you.
You have to
Myriam.
be aware of your surroundings the best that you can be. And it's sad. It's sad that you have to, if I want to hold, you know, my boyfriend's hand, that I have to make sure that no one's around that's gonna possibly attack me or hurt me, or make sure you're in a safe space. And it's so sad sometimes because I catch myself doing it in public specifically. Is like, you know, he'll want to put his arm around me and I'll like push him away and I'll look around, and it's like the fact that I have to check to make sure that it's okay that you can hold my hand, or you can kiss me in public, or you can put your arm around me. It's not healthy, but you also have to protect yourself, because there are people out there who are not going to like me for that reason, who are going to go out of their way. I mean, I just read an article, and it was a Facebook article, so I'm not 100% sure if it's accurate.
Yeah.
But there was a couple who was two lesbians on a subway in New York. No, was it England?
That was
Anyways, there was a lesbian couple on a subway, and there were some guys coaxing them into making out to appease them, and they beat them up for not doing it.
Yeah, it's
What?
horrible. It's
Yeah.
horrible.
That's
It just
horrible.
happened about two days ago.
We need to make sure that we share that out on the Facebook so that you know our audience can see that that's happening, and
Yeah.
that we can rally against that, because that's not right.
Yeah.
I know for me, just the way that I wear my hair comes with so many stereotypes, right? We face these things and people place judgment, and we over police each other, and we mistreat each other, and we disrupt people for being disruptors. And yet we still celebrate people for their individuality. So it's like, it's hard to find the line.
It is.
You know what I mean?
It is. There was a quote when I first started feeling like I was different and I needed to say things and be a disruptor. I didn't even know what was happening at that point. But I remember just hearing a quote from Bill Maher, and he said, "You can't claim to be for peace if you're not willing to disturb it." And I remember that resonated with me so well, and thinking, Myriam, that's what you're doing. This is what you're doing. You're not being peaceful. You're actually working for peace. You're disrupting it. And since then, it was like a moment that clicked. And to me, it was like, this is what you were supposed to be doing. You're supposed to be spreading this message of disturb that peace. That's how you make peace happen.
Yeah, I know for me, my thing is like, until everybody's liberated, until you can walk down the street and hold your lover's hand, until you can speak Arabic in its full glory wherever you are, until I can wear my nappy hair the way that I want to, until everybody's liberated, nobody's liberated. And we have to remember that. We have to push that message forward, and we have to keep going. And we'll be right back with the Asheville View.
Welcome to Ask Your Doctor on the Asheville View. Have you ever woken up in the morning and looked in the mirror and thought, oh my, what is growing on my face? I mean, seriously, could be a big old black hair right here. I mean, women of all ages actually have this uninvited hair growth. Could be on a little mustache. It could be at the bikini line, your chest even. But this is like a problem because it's nothing that you want to have looking at you every day. So what can you do about it? Other than the fact that you might be comforted that millions of women have this, but it's really an imbalance of hormones. And that's if your estrogen is low and your testosterone is higher, then you're going to have more hirsutism, and that's the term for facial hair. Also, if the estrogen is normal and your testosterone is too high, that's going to create an imbalance. Now, those imbalances can be created by ovarian cysts, supplements with hormones. It can be diabetes, it can be smoking, it can be inflammation, it can be genetic. And although there's no identified genetic gene for it, we do see that it runs in families. As a matter of fact, my niece asked me about it, and she's like 30. She said, "Why, Sharon, am I growing a mustache?" Well, she also has diabetes. Now, I'm not saying diabetes, everyone grows a mustache. But being aware of your health conditions. And then what do you do, when you have this facial hair? Because it's so obvious to you. Maybe not so obvious to other people, but for you, when you look in the mirror, it just stands out to you. You can do the hormonal balancing, which is so important because, first of all, there's so much misinformation on hormones. And it's important for your hormones, not only your sex hormones, which are really important to get those balanced, but also thyroid and adrenal function, your neurotransmitters, all that needs to be in balance so that you are living your best life and you're healthy, and so some of these things don't occur as often for you. So you balance your hormones, and then you can do the things that we're pretty familiar with. You can wax, you can pluck, you can tweezer it, you can shave it, you can have electrolysis, you can have laser treatments to remove this extra hair. And you can use medications as well. But the medications, for example, spironolactone has been used for a long time. But every medication has its own side effects. And when you're using that diuretic, you actually tend to lower your potassium, which creates a whole bunch of other cascade of health issues. So the best thing is make sure your hormones are balanced. Use whatever cosmetic treatment that's comfortable for you. So when you look in the mirror, you just see that glowing face, that health. Because you know what? You deserve to get the best treatment. You deserve to have the best options, and you deserve to have your best health so you can live your best life. And this is Dr. Sharon Norling from the Asheville View on Ask Your Doctor.
Watching the Asheville View, and we're back with special guest Emily Breedlove. Emily is going to talk to us about disrupting with compassion. Hi, Emily.
Hi, Aisha.
So, Emily, tell us a little bit about what it means to disrupt with compassion.
Well, so I am an entrepreneur, and I have operated very much in the middle between working with the government, working with universities, working with nonprofits, and being an entrepreneur. And so I've learned personally how just showing up in the room and doing the work that I do, because I'm different, because I'm a mompreneur, I'm usually the youngest woman in the room, that just my presence in and of itself is a disruption. And it took me a long time to start recognizing what the personal responsibility was to be a voice on behalf of the rest of the people who were not in that room. I see disruption as consciously being aware of how your role in the conversation has the potential to have significant impact within your community or the work that you're doing.
Right.
So disruption is just causing a shift, whether it's big or small.
Yeah. I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So as an African American woman and often seen as a strong woman, I think sometimes I just have a question. You know, I don't even know that I want to disrupt. I just want to say, hey, can we look at this system or can we look at this process and see how can we make it more equitable? How can we make sure that we reach our outcome? And I still feel like a lot of times I'm seen as aggressive or a disruptor. What can I do, or what magic words can I use to kind of help ease that tension?
Well, I wish I could tell you there were magic words. I'd be making a lot more money if there were. So what I actually realized, it's through this process that I started tapping into, and you'll get this, my mother bear instinct, right? So I'm a mother of two, and I started seeing how I push my children. I push my children because I know what they're capable of. I know that that if they really focus on raising their own standard and challenging themselves, but also holding themselves accountable, that comes from that motherly love, right? And so it was really starting to recognize that I could disrupt and I could challenge the people in my world through standing firmly in, I love you, I respect you, I know that you're capable of doing more, I know that this group is capable of doing more, and I will hold that. I will show up on every board, and I will be the one that says, but should we go further? Is there a part of this conversation that we're not having? And so I think a lot of that too is leaning into the spaces that might be a little uncomfortable, because in essence you are owning your responsibility to challenge them to go a little further, to be more inclusive, to be more progressive, to include people who aren't at the table. But it's also owning the fact that you're going to make them uncomfortable. You're going to make them feel like you're pushing them to a place that they're not really comfortable going. They're going to get anxious. They're going to challenge you at first. And I think really standing in I'm doing this because I know that we have potential in going a little further.
So I've got a question. So many times when people are disrupting or asking questions or speaking out for themselves, you know, if you're a female, you get told you're being hormonal, or she's just in a bitchy mood, or as a gay guy, they're being dramatic, or they just need attention, or like, you know, if you're a person, if you're a person of color, then you're angry or you're crazy. And when someone comes back at you with you're just being crazy or you're just being hormonal or dramatic, how is the best way to counteract that statement to still get your point across?
Yeah. Well, so there's a couple of things that I've looked at, and I really am just trying to practice this in my life and see how I do that, how I show up within these spaces that make them uncomfortable. When you are challenging that comfort zone, people are going to react from a place of protecting themselves, and they're going to often do it by putting you down or by challenging, by minimizing you and the role that you're choosing to play. So what I've noticed for myself and the other people that I've worked with through this process is it really helps being clear on what it is you're really fighting for, what the positive changes and the impact that could come from that disruption, whether it's small or big. And when people do respond from a place of emotion or from reaction, the more that you can bring yourself back to that calculated response of, this is about the opportunity that we owe the people who we should be representing here. I think too, for me, it's owning the fact that, yeah, right now I'm kind of being a bitch. Like when there are moments when you have to stand strong and you unapologetically stand behind the issue or stand behind the change, I really think there's so much in this world that needs to be made better, and it requires more good people willingly stepping into that role of, I will compassionately push you to get closer to where we should be. And so it's a conscious choice all the time in facing the uncomfortable moments, unfortunately.
Yeah.
My question is from a new generation standpoint, because I teach high school students, and a lot of girls, and they stand up for a lot of things, and there are a lot of subjects or topics that they're very, very passionate about, which sometimes can cause a lot of conflict, a lot of aggression, because at that age, it's really hard for them to get their point across. As a person who they come to and look up to and come to me for advice, how can I help them be able to stand up for what they believe and get their point across without doing it more peacefully, without getting to that angry point or angry message? So disrupting in a gentle way.
Yeah.
How can I do that?
Well, so we look at this. So I run the Camp Girlboss program, which is the summer camp for middle school girls. And
Which is perfect.
It's so phenomenal. And part of this process is really teaching girls how to own the power of their ideas and own the power of their voice.
Right.
And so part of that is getting really clear on what it is that they stand for and what it is that they're fighting for. We have had to also incorporate elements of understanding what reacting versus responding. That reacting is that first moment where it's coming from the gut and it's totally emotional. It's usually coming from anger or fear or feeling uncomfortable, versus a response, which is calculated. You take a deep breath. You really stop and reflect back on what is the purpose of this and how can I do it well. But then we also look at conflict resolution and how to lean into a challenging moment. And I think the biggest thing, especially when you're working with young girls, is modeling that for them. Absolutely. Giving them tactics of how to show up in a space where you are challenging what people are doing, where you're challenging and questioning the way that something is operating, and you're presenting a new way of doing it, but also showing it themselves. So we do a lot of practice activities of what happens when you do show up and you're challenging people and it makes them uncomfortable and it becomes a situation that you weren't really prepared for. Because the reality is when you disrupt, this happens all the time. And it's part of really stepping into that space and owning your role in creating change.
This is hard work.
It
like
is.
At the end of the day, this is hard work. So my question is what does self-care look like when you are constantly challenging society and trying to make an impact and change the world?
Well, so it's amazing how once you get really clear on what you stand for, it makes it easier to prioritize those things, because it's not just about self-care for myself, it's self-care for the thing that I'm trying to bring into the world, the way that I'm trying to make positive impact. And that you can't do that when you're tired and broken and empty, right? Your highest form of service is showing up ready to fight on behalf of the thing that you believe in. And so part of that too is knowing your limits, honoring your boundaries, making time not just for yourself but for the work that you do. And I swear all of it comes back to really knowing what you stand for and getting clear on, this is why I do it. This is how I'm creating change. It's easier to then make those sacrifices.
Now, how do we utilize all these tools that you gave us within your relationships with, let's say, your partner, your lover, your husband, significant other? How do we do that? I know how we influence other people, but how do we bring it home?
Well, so I've been really open and honest with my family about the work that I do. And my kids, I do a lot of multimedia, so they're going to watch the Asheville View, they listen to the podcast, they read the articles.
Right.
And so my kids know what mommy stands for. And they know that I'm not just doing this work because I believe in it, I'm doing it because it's changing lives. And so like with Camp Girlboss, I have to make a lot of sacrifices to pull that off. They're coming with me through the camp. And so much of it is being transparent and being honest with your loved ones, with your partners, with your spouses, with your friends, with those who are in this process, and letting them know that this is worth making sacrifices for and that we're all in this together. Yeah, so much of it is just being clear, being open, being consistent, and making it a part of your life. Because you really have to. You have to behave this way on a daily basis, especially once you step into it, because like with equity over everything, it's every choice, every day. It's who you are. It's how you're visible. It's how you move through the world. And you become that source of disruption. But then it becomes really powerful.
Well, I feel like those changes that you're making also in the long run are self-care.
They are.
Because those changes are self-care to yourself. They're going to benefit you. They're going to help you. They're going to put your mind at ease. And I think that's really cool and important.
Well, and so I bet you've seen that too. When you really stepped into equity over everything, right? You became a different person.
I did.
It's like you fall in alignment with this is my purpose.
Yes.
This is why I'm here. This is the work that I'm meant to do, and it
Yeah.
changes you as a person.
It did.
Yeah.
And I think that in knowing you and being around you and watching you disrupt not just Asheville, but Western North Carolina as a whole, I've been inspired by you.
Aw.
And I think we all have, and we're so glad to know you, and we're glad that you came today to hang out with us
So glad.
on The View, and we just appreciate you for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank
I'm
you.
happy to be here.
Thank you so much.
You're watching The Asheville View, and we'll see you next week.